I just spent a long day playing some Littoral Commander Baltic, and I didn't want to stop gaming, but my friends decided to leave in the evening, so with nothing else to do for the rest of the day, I decided to set up Wars of the Sun King 1648-1713 by Serious Historical Games and designer and owner and publisher Philippe Hardy. It is a French company. I'm sorry in the unboxing I said it might be Belgian. You can tell by the logo. Blue, white, red. It's the French flag. This is a game I got recently about the wars of Louis XIV, the Sun King of France, during his reign, his extremely long reign. And I figured I would bust out one of the quote-unquote learning scenarios. The game comes with 5 scenarios. We've got, or is it 6 scenarios? Possibly 6 scenarios. And they go all the way from 1648 to the end of the War of Spanish Succession in 1713, at least as far as Western Europe is concerned, Western and Central Europe. So I have set up the War of Devolution scenario. This was sort of the first war of Louis XIV that took place starting in 1667. And this was, I believe, the Spanish owed him a dowry for his wife, and they did not pay it. I can't remember if it's because she died and it went unpaid, or they felt like they were not obligated to pay it after she died, or something like that. But anyways, he used that as a pretext for claiming the Spanish Netherlands and parts of Franche-Comté, basically the Spanish road here. And he decided that in lieu of payment that he was owed the land. And so he launched a campaign against the Spanish in the Low Countries, in Luxembourg and in Franche-Comté. And as we see here, we have the scenario set up in that part of Europe. And I decided I would do this. It's a 2-year scenario, so 2 turns. Each turn in this game is 1 year and contains a lot of activity. The turns are played over a campaign, as we see here, up to 3 for each side, but it's possible the turn ends before that happens, and that is due to you make a die roll after each of these, and if you roll, I believe, less than the number of campaigns that have been executed, then the turn is over. So whoever has the initiative is going to get more guaranteed turns, and it's possible some years are very fast and some are not. The object of the game is, well, let me start before I talk about the object of the game. The game is very much a French point of view game. All of the victory conditions, all of the diplomacy, all of the things that constitute your objectives are all based on the French perspective, which is actually really nice because I like to, I'm reading a lot about this era right now, and I really like to see how what the French perspective is on this era of their history. So in a scenario setup, it gives you the starting forces and their locations, and as we see, we have an area movement map here. Locations also might have a fortress marker. This represents all the fortresses, or most of the major fortresses in that particular area. So some of the more fortified areas of the Spanish Netherlands, like here, have a 4. That's the highest you can be. And then that goes all the way down to 1 or possibly 0 if there are no fortresses relevant. And additionally, the game scenario instructions will start with these blue sort of sun markers. These are the French objectives. These are locations that France is trying to control in the scenario. And if they do that, that contributes to one of the 4 vectors of victory. And so by controlling it, that means they need to besiege the fortresses, destroy the armies, have sole occupation of the area. Forces, there's leaders and forces. Leaders here, if we look here, this minor French general, you've got a strategic rating here, and this is comes into play during lots of different things: sieging, withdrawing from combat, intercepting, I believe, moving through enemy armies. And we have a tactical rating, and that comes into play during battles. So the leaders are rated for both of those things. Here we see the Marshal de Turenne. He is quite good. And under him, we have got Vauban, the French siege engineer. He's got a star for being sort of an elite special ability leader. And we've got Louis XIV here. Not military commanders really in their own right, but certainly have their benefits. Louis increases the amount of glory gained in battle for both sides. If you win, you get bonus glory. If you're defeated, you lose extra glory. And Vauban is really good in sieges, as you would expect. We have got the coalition side here, primarily made up of Spanish forces at the start of this scenario, but there is a chance for other powers to enter the game. Scenario is also going to give you a force pool for all of the possible powers that can enter. You can never recruit beyond the force pool. So even though the game comes with a ton of counters, you are limited in your manpower based on historical lines. I really, really like that. I think that is great. This game does appear to be quite well researched in terms of the realities of the situation. It is strategic strategic, so we are abstracting some of the geographic stuff, but overall, I think the system appears to probably work pretty well. We'll see as we get started. And then over here, we have the alliance table. This represents the minor powers and which camp they fall into. This will also give each side resource points. So if we look at the map, we've got these gold symbols here. These are going to be tracked on here, and every action in the game is going to cost resource points, and there are many actions to take that you can spend your resource points on. They're all listed here. These range from taking loans, diplomatically pressuring minor or major powers, I think minor powers only, moving your armies, conducting sieges, all sorts of things. Everything flows around the economy of the land you control and how many resource points you have. Campaigns are unlimited. As long as you can pay for actions and you're not broke out of resource points, you can, during a campaign, do as much stuff as you want to do. Given that the turns are a year, the time scale allows for that. So we'll see how that feels in practice, but it does make conceptual sense to me. And once you have passed, then the campaign is over, and then there's a chance the turn ends, and if not, it goes to the other player to do their response campaign. The Spanish don't have a lot of forces here, and actually before we begin playing, I do need to set up and decide whether I want some of these armies to be in garrison inside these fortresses. That makes sieging a little bit more difficult, and the Spanish more than likely are going to want to do that. So coming back to this, we've got the alliance table for minor powers. There are also random events in this game. Those are rolled at the beginning of the year, and they are unique for the game turn, not just the scenario. So 1667 has different events than 1668. Which is kind of cool. Now we get to the victory conditions. So these four tracks here represent the differential in allies between the French and allied camps. So to start this game, it's France versus Spain. Spain doesn't have any allies yet, but when these come into play, this marker is going to shift based on what the difference in alliances is. And one of the reasons you take diplomatic actions is to move minor powers towards the neutral area. What I like about this is you can't actually move minor powers if they start as an ally to one side. They can't move to your side. You can only sort of force them out of the war. This is not necessarily the Napoleonic era, although some scenarios, maybe with Savoy, might have a more aggressive diplomatic thing. We will see. You've also got resource points. This is basically at the end of each year. If you are vastly richer than your opponent, this resource marker will well, not richer than your opponent, but if you're rich, this resource marker will move in favor of one or the other. This really only tracks French resources, so if France spends a lot of effort to try and defeat the Allies will get a benefit out of that, versus if France, is running over them, they'll go up here. Objectives. This is the objectives reached. So these are those four objective markers. Every objective you reach moves this marker a little bit, and as long as we can get it in the blue column, it will count for France. And finally, glory points. Glory points are gained and lost by winning battles, by winning sieges against very powerful 4-strength fortresses, and also sometimes you can lose them if you decide not to ransom captured leaders back to the opponent. So glory is going to fluctuate up and down probably more than any of these. The goal of the game is to get 3 of these 4 markers during the victory check phase into your side of the chart. If you can get all 4, that's considered a substantial victory. Otherwise, at the end of the scenario, if you haven't gotten 3, then it is a tie, or it is an inconclusive result with sort of a lean towards whatever side has maybe more. I really like that the game allows for inconclusive finish to the wars. Most of the wars during Louis XIV ended inconclusively. That's why there were so many of them. Europe was not satisfied with the way things ended up. After the Dutch War in 1678, that directly led to the War of the Reunions, which was Louis trying to seize territory on the eastern frontier of France, and that caused the creation of the League of Augsburg, which led directly 4 years later to the 9 Years' War, sometimes known as the War of League of Augsburg, and that was a brutal decade-long conflict, and then that ended inconclusively, and literally 4 years later, the War of Spanish Succession started. So it's cool that the game allows for there not to be a strict victory and defeat for the sides, because this period was characterized by so many inconclusive, long campaigns. So that's all you need to know about the game and the system. I'm going to finish the setup here with garrisons and armies, and then we'll get going with the first campaign of the year, under which France has the initiative, and we will play for 2 turns, and we'll see who wins the War of the Devolution, or War of the Devolution. With that out of the way, things are starting off badly for the French. We rolled a 4 on the random event. That gives us bad weather conditions and peasant resistance at the rear of the French army. We had a -1 DRM to the D6 result to determine the end or pursuit of the campaign. So that means the 1667 turn is going to be a short one, or shorter than average because of that. But other than that, we're looking at the campaign plan here for the armies. The Spanish are mostly garrisoned up in their fortresses. Franche-Comté is an interesting one because there's only one unit and it's only a level 1 fortress. That seems to be one that we could take probably pretty easily if we recruit some units. The French force pool has 10 infantry and 3 cavalry available to it. Cavalry is useful in battle for superiority modifiers, but I really want to recruit a bunch of that infantry under this general here. And I would like to take that army into Franche-Comté and besiege that space, so that is probably what I will do. I have 12 resource points to start, and we don't have to do this one this turn because I have the initiative on the first turn. So for every 5 SP that I recruit, it's cost me 1 RP. So for 2 RP, I can get all 10 of those units and put them under command of that general. That might be what my first move could be. We can also increase our fortress values. I don't think the Spanish are going to be able to go on the offensive, at least not until the other allies join the war, if they join the war. We can construct a line of defense. So if you have a fortress in an area, you can build fortified lines. They look like this, and I forget exactly what they do, but it's usually good if you're on the defense. You can move, and it costs cash to move armies. And in winter, you can launch a winter campaign if you spend for it. You can also take a loan. That gives you more money if you need it. And you can also do some diplomatic stuff. The only power that France can do diplomatic action on in this scenario is Sweden, and that's only if they join the war. And then some other things here. We can try and control sea zones. We can make sieges a little bit easier, and so forth. So, but we're not there yet. So I'm just looking at what's possible. So we have done the random event. We have a start set of resource points. No one's placed Scorched Earth marker. And then we roll for cabinet strategy. So this is an interesting part of this game. You have all of these markers that basically on one side are blank and on the other side have various things on them. In order to actually physically siege a location, you need to play one of these markers in a location that has a fortress face down. So your opponent doesn't know what you're putting down until you execute it. And again, to have a battle, you can't have a battle there, at least a major battle. You can always skirmish, but you can't have a major battle unless you've put down a battle marker in that particular area. Scorched Earth reduces the resource value of the space, and this is really good too if you're trying to deny the enemy the ability to continue the war, especially on really rich provinces hey, no, that's not worth 1. There's like in Holland, for example, or in Frisia up there. And then this is decoy. So if your opponent places a battle marker and you place a decoy marker and they reveal to have a battle and you reveal that it's a decoy, then no battle takes place. So it's a way for you to kind of outthink your enemy. Why these are important is that at the end of the turn, for each one of these that you have not played, you lose glory. So you have to achieve your war objectives at the end of a year that you've set for yourself, but you can't be too ambitious that you can't realize them all. I think that's really interesting. So in order to determine that, we roll on a table, and that table is, if I can find it, that's the siege table. No, it's on this one. We roll on the cabinet strategy table. So based on the number of resource points we have, the French are going to have 12, so they're going to roll here. The coalition have less than 10, so they're going to roll here. So you can see that the French are going to have many more objectives. This is a +1 to this roll. We do have Turenne in play. The other leaders are not. And +2 if Marlborough, obviously he's not in this war. So we're going to roll up for the French and coalition. I'll let you know how many they get. So the ultimate result is that the French are going to get 4. They rolled here. Coalition are going to get 1. So I suspect the coalition are probably going to take the decoy. I have to decide which ones I'm going to take. Now, this is always done in secret, so I am losing a bit of the fog of war of the game by playing solo here. But again, this is just a learning game for 2 years. Just want to see how it goes. One of the rules in the game is that if you enter a space with an enemy army, you must have a battle against them before you can besiege the fort. So obviously here in Brabant, we are going to have to attack the Spanish general there before we can put those fortresses under siege. Conversely, down here in Franche-Comté, there is no army. We can just move in and start the siege there. So with that in mind, we want to take a battle marker. We want to take a siege marker. I'm thinking maybe I would like to take the Scorched Earth marker. I'm just trying to see where that might be useful. Franche-Comté doesn't give any resources to the Spanish. Luxembourg doesn't give any. Brabant gives 1. The problem is Scorched Earth also it impacts our sieges. So we don't want to Scorched Earth the place we're trying to take control of. So yeah, this is going to be interesting. I don't have to take 4. I can just take 2 if I want. And I don't expect the Spanish to attack me. So if I took a second siege, I'm just trying to think this through. If I recruit a bunch of units under here, and we go siege Franche-Comté, that's 1 siege. We try and have a battle against the Spanish there. That's a battle marker. And then we do another siege, probably in Brabant, to take that area. And that gives us the ability later to siege Flanders and Hainaut without the Spanish getting in our face. So let's go with 3. We'll start with 3. It's maybe dumb, but we'll go with 3. For the Austrian side, I'll get out their markers, but as you know, I'm going to be taking the Scorched Earth, or not the Scorched Earth, the decoy, because I'm expecting the French to try and steamroll through Brabant, and that will be that. So it turns out on the first turn of the game, you skip the reinforcements and recruiting aspect of the game, and you go straight to the first turn. So knowing that we're not going to get additional troops, I've elected to just take 2 markers, and that's 2 siege markers. 1, because I suspect that the Alliance player is going to be carrying a decoy, and also because I can't actually use a battle marker. Both sides need to have at least 10 SPs in order for a battle to take place, and that's when you spend the marker. I know for a fact that the Spanish don't have 10 that even start the game here, so it's likely going to be a skirmish, even if including if he doesn't retreat. So with my first turn of the game, I am going to move this army, and we have got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 18 plus 3 leaders here. So we've got 18 SPs. For every 10 SPs that move, it costs you 2 resource points. So I'm going to deduct 2 resource points from the French to move this giant tipped over stack into Brabant. And when I do that, if I could do this one-handed as I flick things around. Okay. There are displays, by the way, so that you don't have to have giant stacks on the map. So we're going to move from Picardy into Brabant. Now, normally this stack here by the Spanish, so I have to stop, first of all. That's the first thing that happens. I have to stop unless I want to do a initiative test, and I would test my initiative versus the other leader's initiative, and I could continue moving through. So I can move all the way to Holland if I wanted to, or into Liège, or whatever. But in this case, I don't want to. This is an objective. I want to stop here. So after you're done moving, you look at the attrition and desertion table, number of SPs. So I'm in the 11 to 20 column with modifiers. I did not go through Scorched Earth. I didn't go through more than 1 zone. It's not winter. And if the general's strategic rating is not 0. So in this case, my strategic rating with Turenne is 4. So I'm a -1 on this roll. And I just need to not roll a 5 or a 6. So we roll, and I rolled a 3. So no attrition taken, as you would expect. And now we are going to have a skirmish. But before that happens, the Spanish can decide whether or not they are going to try and retreat from battle. So they have to do an initiative check. They look at I believe it's their strategic rating. And their strategic rating, I'll just confirm this so I don't give you bad info. Yes, the differential of the army taking the test minus the differential of the opposing side, you need to have higher than a 2. So 1 compared to 4 is a -3. So I'm rolling a die, I'm getting -3, and I just need to have 3 or better. So I need to roll a 6 in order to get out of the way of this army. Let's see if we can do it. Spanish, they rolled a 4. So they're not going to be retreating. So we will have a skirmish here. And so to do the battle properly, we are going to look at the combat table, that's the siege table. Here we have the combat results table. So we are going to roll a die. We are attacking as the French. So the difference in the tactical rating of the 2 generals, I have a 3, that's the bottom number, and the 1. So I am +2 for there. There's no lines of defense. This is what those do. They make defending a territory easier, or having fights in the territory easier. None are there. I don't control a fortress in the zone. -1 if the zone contains a fortress controlled by the defender. We do see that there are fortresses there controlled by the defender. So we're +2, -1, so we're at +1. And then elite, number of elite units. I do have 1 elite cavalry. Right there. I also have Turenne, who is elite. I believe that's what the star means. We have no elite units in the Spanish, so we have the superiority for elite, so we're getting a +1 for that. So we're back up to +2. I do have artillery, the Spanish don't, +3, and cavalry, I have 5 cavalry, and the defender has, I think, 2 cavalry, so I have superiority there, so it's +4. So the number of SPs that we have in this is 18. The number of SPs the Spanish have is 4, so that is going to be 4-1, and we are on the maximum column. And we're about to smash the Spanish in the face. We rolled a 2. +4 is a 6. So we get a C result of losses to the Spanish. If we come down here, the Spanish army is 1 to 10. C, they take 1 SP loss. And they are going to take it to their infantry. So that happens there. So it's not a complete wipeout. And then after the skirmish, we only do 1 round of combat. If it was a regular battle, we would do 3 rounds of combat. But after the skirmish, then we would determine who wins. Yes, he's got to retreat his army to an adjacent zone he controls and spend the necessary resource points. So in order to move this stack, we have to spend a resource point, and we are going to go to Haino, which is here, because we have a stronger fortress there, and we're likely on the Spanish turn going to put those under there as a garrison. So we spend a resource point from the Spanish side, and we've won a battle, or we've won a skirmish. Nothing happens because you need to win a battle to earn glory. And it doesn't affect any minor powers because they're not in the game yet. So we just won the skirmish. That's fine. And I believe on the next turn, we would be allowed to, or not the next turn, we're still in this campaign. Yeah, so it's still my campaign phase, and I can just keep going and taking action. So the first thing we're going to do is use a siege marker here in Brabant, and we are going to siege this fortress. So to siege the fortress, it has to be free of enemy armies. It is free of enemy armies. Now we have to roll to see how many rounds the siege is going to go. So first of all, we roll against the siege table, which is here. And there's a marker to determine how many rounds the siege can go. You want a long one if it's a big fortress. So what we do, we look at the modifiers. Vauban is in play. We roll +1. And size of the besieger army, greater or equal to 30 SP. Well, that's not true. So we're rolling a +1 on this roll. And it's literally whatever we roll, that's how many rounds it is. So we roll a 5. So this siege is going to go possibly 6 rounds, which is good for us, I think. And then the next thing that we do, does it cost RPs to do a siege? Let me check that. It does not cost SPs to do a siege. We just have to reveal the marker, which we did. So now we're going to count up the strength points of the army. We've got, I'm going to move these here for a second. We've got 10, 11. We count cavalry as half, so that's 12, 13. 1 doesn't do anything for us, and we've got 2 artillery. So what did I say? 10, 11, 12, 13, 15. We've got 15 strength points, and the fortress value is the amount of the garrison, infantry, 2, plus the fortress value is 4. So 15 to 4 is going to be 3-1, 4-1, excuse me. So we look at the 4-1 table here. Now, I can spend, for modifiers, I can spend a RP, which I'm going to do as the French, because I want that. So I'm getting +1. I'm not starting with, so if you're over 6-1, you get additional modifiers. +1 per artillery present in the besieging army. 2 +2 because I have 2 there. So we're up to +3. Don't have naval support. And I have Louis XIV, so +4, and I have Vauban, so +6. This is going to probably go badly for the Spanish, and they don't have cohorn. So we're on the 4-1 table, +6. We got the maximum you can possibly get. So what does this mean? BR/1FVSH. BR, breach. So if this siege went another round, I would get another +1 for the breach modifier here, but we also reduce the fortress value by 1, which we're going to do. So that goes down to 1. Then SH is surrender with honors. So what that means is after you adjust the fortress, the extra SP that the Spanish have are placed in an adjacent zone controlled by their camp, and the fortress falls under the control of the besieger. Put a control marker in the zone. So I believe I take one prisoner. So there's a fortress of 1 and there's 2 SPs. I think one of them goes here, and then I think the other one becomes a prisoner. Let me check. So the actual answer to this is actually a hole in the translation, of which there are a couple where the English version of the French rules didn't get moved over, and they're very minor things. That is that when a garrison surrenders by honor of war, it's not just the excess who go somewhere else, it's the whole thing. So the garrison there surrendered, they've moved over here to the Spanish army in Brabant. I'm trying to build up a force there. The French have taken control of Brabant. That's going to give them a resource point for the next turn. They have a fortress there of level 1 that we can rebuild later during the beginning of a year. So what else do I want to do? I can still do things with this army. Turenne is maybe not finished. I only have 1 more siege marker, and originally I was going to use that down here in Franche-Comté, but now I may be rethinking that I want to besiege Flanders and Hainaut. And that would secure the Low Countries for me and leave Franche-Comté, till the next season. It's a tough one. This would give me glory. That's 4 points. That would be one of the 4 victory conditions that I need. And I don't know. This is a tough one. Let me think about it. All right. Well, we decided to besiege Hainaut, and probably the level 4 fortress there was Lille, the famous fortress. And it was a tough one. We rolled for 6 possible rounds, and even with like a +6, +7 on the die roll, I still had to spend a bunch of resource points to degrade the fortress. And ultimately, we leave the fortress there with wherever I put it. It's a 2 now. It's a 2 strength fortress. Here it is right here. So, but we do gain control of it. That's another objective for the Sun King. And we only have 6 resource points left. So unfortunately, that is, if we use more, that's going to send us down here, which is the opposite way towards victory that we want to go. We don't want to bankrupt the state. Now, I could take a loan, but I'd have to repay it at the end of the game. And I feel like this first year of campaigning was pretty successful. I can drop a garrison into there, which I'm probably going to do since I'm going to be recruiting next turn. The next ones I have to take are Luxembourg, which only has 3 Spanish units in it, and Franche-Comté. So we're going to readjust for next turn probably to go for the win. Unfortunately, for each of these objective spots that I've taken in the Low Countries, there's a higher chance that other minor powers enter the war, specifically the Dutch United Provinces and England. So we're going to see how that works. In either case, we have ended the first campaign, and now we roll to see if the campaign is over. Remember, we're rolling -1 because of the random event. So 4 minus 1 is 3. That is higher. So the campaign is going to move up to 2, and that's going to allow the Spanish to take a campaign, but they don't really have anything that they can do, so they may pass. Let me take a look at it. Well, the big problem for the Spanish is that they don't have any leaders, therefore they can't move any of their units, so they have to pass. So that is going to bring us up to, so we pass at 2. Now we roll to see if it ends. Remember, if we roll anything 3 or less, we rolled a 5, minus 1 is 4. That's going to give the French a campaign. Now, like I said, I don't necessarily want to go below my resource points. And also, I don't have any more objective markers. If I had taken a 3rd siege, I might consider moving the army down to Franche-Comté, but I didn't do that, so I can't besiege that location. And Luxembourg is the same. So we're going to pass. And once you get 2 passes, that automatically ends the campaign season for the year. And we go into the winter phase. So here's where we stand in the winter phase at the end of the turn. The alliances difference is still 0 because it's only Spain versus France, but that could change here very soon. Resources. If the French had used, if they had been over 12 resources at the end, they could have won the game. But they didn't. But they do have 2. They achieved 2 of their objectives. So that's great. And then secondly, glory points. They got 1 glory for reducing a level 4 fortress in 1 campaign season. One campaign gives you a glory point. So because of the lightning siege of Lille, we did move glory into the French column. So we just need to get one of these 2 into the French column by the end of next turn to win the game. That may be challenging given where we are headed. So if we look at the sequence of play, we can do diplomatic actions. We can spend resource points on minor powers. There are none. And then we set the resource points to 0 for both sides. And we see if there's a winner. In this case, there is not. And then we go 1 space forward. So the French are going to get Condé, the general, coming in this turn, and he is quite good. We're going to form a new army with him to go take Franche-Comté and potentially Luxembourg. All right, a flurry of activity in the pre-game turn where we set up for the campaigns for the year. Very expensive. So the first big thing is that the coalition allies have entered the chat. So we have the Dutch Republic. They're coming in with a cavalry and I believe 6 infantry. They've got 7 SPs there. We've also got the British coming in. They've got a cavalry and they have got 3 cavalry and 10 SPs. So suddenly the coalition is able to field a huge army. We've also got the Swedes coming in. They've only got 3 SP, but every little bit helps. And that's a huge windfall for the coalition. So after, we didn't get a random event, but we did get that happening. And then we got our cabinet strategy. So the French, they decided to take 4 markers, 2 battles, 2 sieges. It may be a mistake, but the one thing I forgot last turn is that the glory points actually went up 1 more because the coalition was stuck with a decoy marker that they didn't use. So if you have campaign goals that you don't spend, then you lose glory. So the French have the opportunity here to not use potentially all of these if they don't want to. Yeah, and the Allies just took decoy in battle. The reason they took battle is because they think they can drive the French off from the Low Countries. Now that I think about it, maybe siege is better. The juicy target here is there, but if they don't win the battle, then they can't siege. I'm going to risk it because they have the manpower now, and we're going to take siege for the Allies. Battle and siege. They want to try and take back one of these things from the French to lower that particular victory threshold condition. After we did that, we did do the reinforcements and recruitment and the purchase of prisoners. The Spanish bought back their prisoners of war. They and then recruited them in Luxembourg and additionally built some fortified lines around the fortress to make sure the French will not have an easy time to capture that particular province. The French brought in Condé here with a giant army, 9 infantry and a cavalry. And they also increased the fortress strength here in Flanders and built some fortified lines, expecting that avenue of attack from the Allies. We put Condé in Champagne just because we do have an adjacency here with Liège where if the Allies decide not to go head on, they can come around and enter here, and that would be bad. We don't want them to do that, but it gives him the flexibility to go here or to go to Franche-Comté down here and siege that, and I think we'll see a little bit of both. Now comes a very critical moment in the preparation of the turn, and that is who is going to get the initiative. This is a wager. Each side is going to roll a die and add the amount of resource points that they have wagered for the initiative. This is critical. If the French can get it, they can move into a defensive position here in Brabant and try and head the Allies off. If the Allies get it, they can get in there first and potentially besiege Lille or Brussels. Is that Brussels? Brussels in there. So this is going to be very important. So the way I'm going to do this, because it's hard to bid against yourself, is I'm going to double blind it. So I am going to say both sides are going to wager half of their remaining resource points divided by 2, half the die roll of resource points, except if the Allies roll a 6, then they're going to wager none. So let's go with the French. The French are going to wager 3, so that's going to be 2 resource points. The French have wagered here, and the Allies are going to wager 2 resource points. So both sides are going to be rolling at +2. So we start with the French. French roll a 4. The Allies roll a 6. So the Allies are going to have the initiative, and that's going to change the whole complexion of this war. Well, the Allies ended up moving into Brabant. The army under Turenne intercepted, and the Allies, looking at the modifiers, the very stiff negative modifiers they were facing, decided that they were not going to pursue a battle there. So both armies are kind of locked in, facing off against one another there. That makes the zone contested. which maybe is all the Allies really need to do to keep France from getting up to the 12, higher than 12 resource point production. We'll see. They're going to pass the campaign over to the French. Well, that ended up being a really bloody move by the Allies. Perhaps they should not have done that. The French smashed the British coalition here over a series of battles in 1668, eliminated something like 3-1 in terms of losses. The French force makeup is just superior, and they also had the advantage of having a fortress that they controlled in the area, or a series of fortresses. And so all of that means that we pumped up the glory for France quite a bit, and we forced Sweden from the war. So the coalition is not only broke, but in real trouble. The Dutch suffered pretty heavily. The Swedes abandoned the cause. The English there have taken a lot of losses, and the French still have money, and they still have markers to use, and they want to use as many of them as possible, because it appears that the English are not going to be able to use all of theirs, short of deciding to fight a really adverse battle against the French in Brabant. So we're going to use up the rest of the French resource points and see what we can do with the end of this campaign, and then likely we will achieve a French victory. Well, the French just ground the Allied army here in Brabant down to dust, and I discovered a very valuable lesson, and that is, if you are bankrupt, if you have no more resource points, it is very, very bad to get caught in battle, because you cannot retreat, and you're forced to take sort of pursuit losses after every skirmish and battle. So what the French were able to do is just move in Condé's army from Champagne and just engage in multiple skirmishes over the course of the year, and just essentially attrit them away to nothing and capture their leaders. And that was because after every single battle, the Allies didn't have any resource points to retreat back to Holland, which completely opens the way for the French if we were going to continue this game beyond this year, and was a very strong lesson in having resource points available in your reserve in case you get attacked. This was a complete disaster for the Allied military organization. In their haste to try and bring their manpower to bear, they got themselves into a horrible, horrible situation. And now the French are free. So the last thing we're going to do in this campaign is we're going to have Turenne detach some of the forces here from Brabant, move down, attack the Spanish so they can't do anything. And then we'll just end the campaign, and it looks like the French are going to win. I'll show you that. And we come to the end of the game with what I would say is a pretty dominating French victory, thanks in no small part to my idiocy with the Allies. Essentially, where we leave off, France has conquered the Low Countries of Flanders with their armies. They've built some forts. They've taken Franche-Comté, a sizable force left there, and the Spanish retreating into the fortress at Luxembourg with no recourse after losing in a couple skirmishes to Turenne's army. So the French win this one, and we know that because the differential in Allies, we knocked Sweden out of the war. Therefore, this is now 1 or higher. That counts. The resource points that the French are producing each turn is now higher than 12 because we conquered Brabant. There's 12 in France normally, plus the 1 from Brabant, so that's 13. The Allies were not able to carve off any piece of French territory. We achieved 3 of our objectives. The only one we didn't take was Luxembourg because it was too hard. And we got 10 glory, which is quite a bit. Winning those battles early against in the 1668 campaign with Turenne's army, because Louis was there, we doubled up our glory gains, and therefore it is a French victory. Both sides had objective markers left at the end, but because they were equal, no glory was exchanged. And that is a look at the Wars of the Sun King. This was the War of Devolution, a quick learning scenario, 2 years. And I'm excited to play this game a little bit more. It's a pretty fun little area combat game. Sometimes people call it dudes on a map. There's a little more going on that kind of reflects the history of the era than just dudes on a map. And I think the thing I like most about it is that the combat table is actually reflective of losses during this period. It's usually you're taking 1 to 2 losses, so you're never going to just overrun an army. But if you get an army into a situation like I did where there's no money or they can't retreat, then you can just essentially grind them down over the course of a year and force them into ruin. So some valuable lessons learned there. I'm looking forward to play this head-to-head. I think some of the fog of war with these markers being hidden would cause some more suboptimal decision making on the part of the players. And obviously, the bigger scenarios, we get more minor powers. The map playable area is a lot bigger than just kind of the low countries. So you have a much more expansive game, and how you spend your resource points is obviously going to be much more important, which theater you're focusing on. I might play the War of Reunions at some point. It's another 2-turn scenario. Might be interesting. That one's going to focus primarily down in this region here, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, thanks for watching this. Let me know if you have any comments and if you'd like to see more.